everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Crazy Stupid Marketing Show, the show where we talk about all the crazy stupid stuff that people do in marketing and how to not do that. But instead, do smart, meaningful stuff with our marketing time, resources, and budgets. And folks, today we have a critical component of this conversation that we're going to be talking about. And unfortunately, there's still a lot of crazy stupid happening in this arena. So we're going to be talking about go-to-market. So if you saw it in the title, GTM, when we say GTM, marketers love shorthand, go-to-market. But we're talking about go-to-market insularity today. So what happens when we get caught in this echo chamber specifically things that are crazy and stupid in the go-to-market function, and we aren't looking outside of that? We're not asking questions around that. We're going to open this big can of worms around the insularity in the go-to-market function today. And I have one of my favorite brainstorm partners when it comes to marketing things, Mark, joining me for the conversation today. Before we meet Mark, who has been on the show before, so if you watch the show, you will even see on the intro, he's like one of the first circles that comes up.
Right. I got quickly covered up.
I mean, we can layer people. This is what happens. This is layered conversations on this show, but some are foundational. This is a conversation for all of us. So if you're joining us live today, please feel free to get in the comments. We already have Leanna and Tammy and Meryl and LinkedIn user who is probably either Wolfram or Alex. I'm not sure. So if it's one of you and you would like to confirm which one it is, please let me know. I know both of you come in as the LinkedIn user. Get in the conversation. Ask your questions, share your experiences, and the more voices we can get in the conversation today, the more robust the conversation becomes for all of us. So please, please, please do that. I also realized that I never introduced myself in this show. I'm Tracy Borison. I'm your host. I'm very passionate about helping people understand what is crazy and what is stupid and how to not do those things. So quick definitions of what that means on the Crazy Stupid Marketing Show. Crazy being the things that we do over and over and over, expecting a different result, but not getting one. And stupid being the things that you do just because someone told you you should do them, but that's the only reason. It is Wolfram. Boom. See, I know my LinkedIn users. This is great. And Ben is also joining us today. He's already got a question, but before we get to the questions, before we deep dive into the conversation, Mark, can you please give us a little bit of background on you? And I mean, there's a lot of things that you do that leads you into GTM insularity and a whole swack of other things. But what would you like to share with us today that gives us a good foundation of where we're going to go with this conversation?
Sure. So, in my career, I think I was just exceptionally blessed to hold a lot of different kinds of roles. And so, kind of like the opening line on my LinkedIn profile is I've had a bunch of different roles. I've been a CEO, a CFO, a CMO, a CDO. I have in companies very large to very small, right? I have a lot of experience that cuts horizontally across, right? And so I speak all these languages, and it enables me to really understand what different leaders are trying to say, trying to think, why they get into arguments the way that they do. And so I started out as a marketing person, right? And so that was kind of my default position. And a lot of these roles that I got because I was so focused on learning to talk about marketing from the point of view of other people in the business, that different leaders started to say, different CEOs started to say, you know what, I think you can do this other role, right? And so that together with causal AI, which you never like to self-describe as a pioneer or something like that, right? But I think a lot of times people think of me that way because I was just very much ahead of the market on it. And I look at it very much through the lens of legal requirements. So Delaware's revision of fiduciary duty and what that means all the way through a corporation. And also the SEC has similar regs that they announced in November. The EU, Canada, right? There's a lot of, it's kind of like innovation. Somebody starts having innovative thoughts over here in Latin America, I can guarantee you that somebody in Russia and somebody in China and somewhere in the United States are also having those same thoughts. So that's the perspective that I bring to this. A CEO not too long ago referred to me as a living Venn diagram, and I had never really thought of myself that way, but I guess I am in many ways.
Well, and I think this does tie into like where I mean it was a post of yours and it was quite a while ago now when I was like, hey, do you want to come on the show and talk about this? Where like it I mean, LinkedIn has been self-described as an echo chamber many times among many arenas. And this is a phenomenon that equally happens in the go-to-market function. So let's start the conversation with some of the reasons where people end up getting stuck in like an echo chamber of ideas.
So I think, just speaking from my own experience, right? For as long as I've been in, a career, marketing in particular, but more broadly, the go-to-market functions have been under a lot of scrutiny. Some people would say attack, right? It's not been fun, and certainly one of the main reasons why I got into causal AI as a CMO was that I all that stuff, all that can't prove my value kind of thing, right? Just was driving me to distraction, right? I mean, there was a point in my career as a CMO when I really started to think I didn't want to do it anymore, mainly because of that, right? So let's talk about for a second, because I've actually done a lot of research on this. Some of this may strike a little close to home for people, but I don't think that anybody can credibly deny it, right?
So it might be uncomfortable, but it's the truth.
Right, it is. So whenever a group of people, a tribe, a profession, whatever, is under a significant amount of pressure and scrutiny for a long period of time, regardless of what they happen to represent, right? They are going to get tighter. Their affiliations are going to get closer. They are going to start thinking a lot of the same thoughts. This is one of the reasons why marketers, but also other professions, love to go to events that feature no one but people like themselves, right? And they can sit and have a cocktail and bitch and moan about, whatever, and everybody else is having pretty much the same experience, and you go on down the road, right? And you feel better because you're going to go back to the office in 2 or 3 days, and it's just going to be more of the same. The problem here is that with marketing today, with go-to-market functions as a whole today, what they believe has not moved at all in relationship to changes that we all can see in the marketplace. The frameworks that are used are still largely the same. Yes, they may have changed, they may have swapped out this channel for that channel and, all this kind of stuff, right? But the fundamental mechanism, the fundamental belief about what's working and not working has not changed. Yet the environment has changed so much that it is obsoleting almost their entire point of view. So then the big question becomes, by the way, I'm not picking on marketers. It happens in a lot of other professions too, just to varying degrees, right?
It's
The
a marketing
problem
show,
becomes,
so we talk about it in terms of marketers today, but
that's right.
it's
Yeah.
broader. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm not sitting here just, like trying to give marketers a hard time. In fact, quite the contrary, right? Quite the contrary. So the question then becomes, right? What's going to make you change your point of view? But even more structurally underneath that is, what does a profession do when most of the transmission of information and perspective happens only within that profession, right? So they're kind of, this is not a polite word, but it gets the point across. The perspectives are kind of inbred, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what happens if they're wrong? Because they all believe the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
They're all reinforcing the same perspective. But what happens when they're wrong? When they absolutely, positively, without a doubt, are no longer effective? Because that's really the definition. In the face of reality, are you effective? Now, what is reality? Well, there's probably a lot of ways to describe it. One of my favorites is that reality is the thing that I run into when I am wrong.
Mm.
And we're seeing a lot of that right now, right? And if you want a great, inarguable example of this and go to market, all you have to do is look at the fact that CAC continues to climb. It's just
Cost
getting
of customer
ridiculous.
acquisition, for those of you who
Right.
aren't sure what that means.
And we're actually, in most companies, we're pointing out to people that they're understating the CAC, because the CAC is usually only a marketing expense, but the entire expense of acquiring a customer cuts across many different functions.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, while it's not entirely synonymous with P&L, it's close. Okay.
Yep.
So if you have that kind of situation and yet your deal volume is down, your average deal price is down, and your average deal velocity is slowing and slowing and slowing and slowing, right? And the number of deals that you're in that close without any vendor being named as a winner, okay? The whole profit and loss piece in your company is just getting murdered.
Mm-hmm.
Right? This is one of the reasons why a CFO today tends to see budgets, anybody's budgets, right, as a loan of shareholder capital that has to be repaid. So how does go to market repay its loan?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it brings in more deals, that's revenue, bigger deals, that's more or less margin, and faster deals, that's cash flow from revenue impact, right? Those are the fundamentals of it. And right now, the fundamentals are not happening.
Right. Well, and Kathleen brings up a great point here about how marketers can believe that changing media or channels or technology is changing strategy. But then there's a lot of change that's happening, but there's not a lot of meaningful data being collected or results being noticed on a P&L. And I mean, one of the things that I've seen very commonly in marketing functions is that we do activities and we pat ourselves on the back for doing the amount of activities we said we were going to do, even though the results are not showing up anywhere meaningful from a business point of view. And when you I love what you said about the loan on shareholder capital, because if if I was looking at my marketing budget as like, I'm getting a loan from the business to do things that generate business, and I am like pretty consistently not paying back my loan. Well, if that was a loan shark, I'm gonna get my kneecaps busted.
Well, that's I don't think that most CFOs want to be seen as loan sharks. Okay.
No, and nor do I think that they would come around with a baseball bat.
But
it's an
hey,
interesting
yeah.
pressure test to say, like,
Yeah.
if that was the case, would I consistently keep doing these activities knowing that this is the trajectory? Probably not.
Yeah, I mean, look, let's just be really super candid here in the hopes that it helps somebody, right? The reason why CMOs and CROs in particular churn with such frequency, I think the latest number that I saw just 2 weeks or so ago is every 19 months now, right? So they're not even making it to 2 years anymore. It's because they're not seen as moving that needle as repaying that loan. Now, is that fair? In many cases, it's not. Okay, time lag has a huge uh, role to play in how that kind of goes down. But I will also tell you this: that most go-to-market teams cannot explain even their theory of what it is that they're trying to achieve. Mainly because most of them still stop. Their terminal metric is MQL or something similar to that, right?
And so let's tie this back to this like go-to-market insularity, because if we're all so convinced that the MQL is like the thing that we need to get, then we're going to be doing some weird, dare I say, crazy, stupid things that are pointed at MQL as the target, when really the target is something completely different than that. So how do we go about, let's assume the people have chosen this episode because they feel like maybe they were getting pulled into this echo chamber of MQLs, for example, and they would like to be kicked out of that. What are some things that people can look for in an organization that might give them some insights on where to draw a better target?
Well, I think actually we don't have to reinvent the wheel here at all. At the end of the day, go to market, all those functions working together as part of a system. That is the revenue engine of the company. Its importance is indisputable, right? And so, what does that mean? It means that the metrics have to be more revenue, more margin, more cash flow, right? It is not about how cost efficiently you can do more shit, right? That's not it.
Yeah.
Right? Now, in fairness, okay, your bosses have been doing the same game, playing the same game, right? It's the game called EPS. As soon as they can't grow anymore and they become what's called a value stock, right? The whole narrative that they have with the investment community, the capital community, is around EPS. And yet EPS today has very little to say about the real health of the business because it is so over engineered, right? Stock buybacks. It's a lot easier to reduce costs one quarter and then jack them up again the next quarter, right? I mean, you can just play all sorts of games. And that is exactly what has been going on in go to market. Neither one of these areas of endeavor that we're talking about here in this comparison are focused on reality. Well, actually, that's not fair. In the case of both of them, right? The only reality that they acknowledge is the competition for capital, right? Give me my budget, give me my investment,
Right.
right? And so, look, I mean, all of this it's not possible to argue it. I realize that is a very incendiary comment in a lot of quarters, right? Your truth, my truth, all this kind of stuff, right? But this is one of the reasons why I don't use the word truth. It's not because I don't believe that it exists. It's just not helpful, right? And I stay away from even the word facts because that's a lot of it is interpretation. Pluto was once a planet, now it's not. Pluto hasn't changed, our understanding of Pluto changed, right?
Right.
So this is a situation where reality really is the best possible word. Is what you're doing working in the current state of reality? Understanding that reality is not static, it does move, it does change. And we can look around right now and say, what was our reality like 4 weeks ago before there was a war in Iran? Okay, pretty
Yep.
straightforward.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to come back to the reality not being static because I think this is a big point that when we're strategizing from a business point of view, we're always like strategizing for now. And this is going to be the thing that we can use for forever. And that has never been a thing. I don't know why we get obsessed with that. But I want to go back to this like game that we're playing because one of the challenges I see is that if you come up to a person and be like, you're playing games with your GTM, none of this is real, right? And people will be like, oh, no, I have lots of data to prove that this is real. The data is, the quality is debatable. But how is there a way that you have seen where people can like kind of self-identify that they are playing those games and that they want to like make this shift to like
A
I don't want to play
reality-based.
games. Yeah, because like now I got to go from this way of being that I have held for X number of years to a reality-based game that I don't necessarily know how to play. So maybe we don't want to consider it a game, but now I'm making the shift to reality and I don't know how to process that. And so what are some things that you have seen that help people in that transition?
I think that the number one thing that I see, our whole team sees, right, is what you're doing working? It doesn't matter how well you understand the current game. If it's not profiting you, your team, your business, your company, right, it's not working, right? All you're doing is playing a game really, really well that ultimately has no point. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you want to move off of that, you have to confront reality. For example, the way that most go-to-market teams think, worse in marketing than in sales, but it's bad in both, right? Is they haven't really evolved as much as they think they have. They're all pretty much in the 2010 range. Okay.
Yeah.
My Lord, that's like 16 years ago.
And there was this whole COVID thing that happened in the middle there.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, I mean, and if you think I'm wrong, look at the frameworks that you're using. Okay. If it's a slide deck, I'd be willing to bet money that the little date on that deck is older than you think. So then, this is the next part is the hard part. The hard part is this is sort of what you were saying, Tracy, is learning to play a new game. Right? That brings you like straight at reality in this case.
Mhm.
That means you have to see all the ways that you were wrong before. However, having said that, I'm going to tell you this. Right now, everything is changing so fast. You could have been right before and be wrong today. This is the ultimate opportunity to safely, negotiate the gap between what you used to do and think and what you should be doing and thinking today, right? Because like we just got through doing a fiduciary audit on a go-to-market in a large corporation, and it was bad. It was, more than 50% was waste, right?
Mhm.
That is sales, marketing, product, and customer success, maybe a couple of other things, right? And so you have to say, okay, that is bad. Okay. But now that I'm level setted on the whole reality thing and I can make evolving choices again based on causal AI in the system, I've actually de-risked my future decisions dramatically.
Mhm.
So this is why I compare it all the time to a GPS on your phone, right?
Mhm.
What does a GPS do? Sometimes you honestly are going to a place you've never been before and you need to know how to get there. Most of the time, if you're like me anyway, right? You're going to places you've been many times, but you are aware of the fact that the circumstances of that trip could be very different,
Mhm.
right? And so if it's bad enough traffic or whatever, maybe that's not the way to go there today,
Mhm.
right? And that's really what it's all about in the end is how do you know what you should be doing in the face of current reality? Causal AI is currently the only way to assess that. Period. End of story. It just is what it is. Does that mean that it's that's going to be forever true? No, I can almost guarantee you it's not.
Yeah. Well, and I think I love when we use real world examples because people get that. I had this scenario the other day when I was driving my son to school and the traffic was stopped. And I was like, what is happening here? I could sit in this, but I feel like sitting in this is not going to get me to my destination on time. So I pulled out my Google Maps and it rerouted me, and we still didn't get to our destination on time, but we got there faster if we had waited in the traffic. And when you think about it that way, there's also multiple ways to get to the same destination. And I think part of this insularity that we experience, again, I work in marketing, so I specifically see it in marketing, is that we think there's like one path. There's like one path to a customer, and I'm going to go down that one path always to get to a customer. And that one path has the exact number of touches and the exact number or the exact words that a salesperson says to a customer. And when you start to like really pressure test that, like even as I say it out loud, we're like, there's no way that that is true. But we do
Well,
all this work to like create that one
yeah.
thing, and then we get like so obsessed with that one thing that we have to like make this true to the degree where I've seen businesses who are like, well, we just have a long sales cycle, and they will take someone who's ready to close in like 6 weeks and turn them into an 18-month cycle. Like, why would you do that? But like, you didn't have to do that. They could have taken the shortcut that day. Maybe not everyone is going to take the shortcut, but there's multiple paths to the same destination.
Yeah, that's so true. I can give you the other end of the spectrum, which is also true, right? Where marketers will say to themselves, if they're like really being honest, they'll say, we don't really know what is super critical to success here. And so we are going to peanut butter our budget across everything. We're going to do it all, right? It's almost like they're operating some sort of investment fund, right?
Yes.
Where
Spread the risk.
spread the risk. Okay. The problem is that as any Wall Street person will tell you, when you do that, it's sort of safe, okay? But you're also giving up any hope of big gains, right? So if you don't know what really drives the outcomes that you're seeking to drive, you are by definition going to have a lot of waste.
Right.
And we see it all the time. There is a very large, very famous company that spends bumping $18 billion a year globally on go to market. At an absolute minimum, 45% of that is waste. Okay. So when
It's
you
a
think
lot of
about
dollars,
what
friends.
that is like negative EPS in the extreme. In fact, their problem is, this is going to be kind of like a mind blower for a lot of people, right? But their problem is that they can't fix the problem quickly. Why? Because if they suddenly just said, you know what, we're not going to spend any of that 45% anymore, we're just cutting it off right now, okay? The EPS hit, or the upside, it would take EPS up so high, okay, that everybody would say, what the hell happened? Right? And this is a situation where they can't really afford, from a credibility perspective, to have that question asked. Right? Now, how long did it take for them to build up that much waste on an annualized basis? Many years, 20 years.
Right.
Okay. So everything compounds. You want your success to compound. You want the things that you're doing that drives business success to compound. But the negative stuff compounds too.
Yep. I mean, I often say too, and this is different with causal AI, but with like Gen AI, we're like giving it something, it is an amplifier of what we give it. So if we give it good stuff, it can amplify good stuff. If we give it bad stuff, it can amplify bad stuff. I think it's really interesting. And again, like coming back to these like loans on shareholder capital and even looking at, I mean, like, and I know CMOs, we manage budgets, right? VPs, directors, we manage budgets, but I don't know. I mean, I haven't been present in conversations where we're really talking about it from this like perspective that we're like, here's your money, don't spend more than this. Right? And like, here you go do stuff with
Yeah,
that.
I mean,
I don't even know
let
enough
me
to tell you what
just
to do.
yeah, let me just say something briefly about that, because that's actually really important, right? What a lot of CFOs, so I've interviewed something like 500 Fortune 1000 CEOs and CFOs of roughly, it's a roughly even split, right? So several hundred CFOs. One of the things that comes up with actually startling regularity is how, in their mind, the very beginning of their opinion of marketers formed. So this is now like 30 years ago, maybe even longer, right? The original sin of marketing in most of their minds is the inability to keep to a budget. They were always overdrawn, always. And worse, were surprised to find out that they were overdrawn. Right?
They were not the money managers. Again, we're not
They were
saying all
not the money
marketers are like
managers.
this, but this is how the perception is.
That's right. And you have to understand that the kind of person who goes into finance, goes into accounting, right? Even though there's very much a difference between those two things, right? The kind of person that goes into those professions considers that, meaning the inability to keep to a budget, as like a moral sin. I mean, we can argue what, how fair that is and all that kind of stuff, right? But that's the way
Again,
that they see
reality.
it. They see it in black and white, right? Bad person, good person. Okay. So then when all of a sudden they feel like over time that there's an unconscionable amount of bobbing and weaving by marketers or by sales leaders or, whatever, right? About not only the value of something, but why things happen the way they happened. And then the big question that comes, right, is okay, so it didn't work. So what are you going to do now? And most of those teams have no good answer to that.
More
Right?
of the same
More
things.
of the same thing, right? That's right. And so I mean, this is going to sound pretty rude, okay? But so many business leaders that I have spoken to for like my book, right, is that their view is that it's not real. Now, they will acknowledge that out there in the marketplace, there are forces that are essentially marketing forces and sales forces that are real. But they will tell you that they don't think that marketers know anything about how their profession actually operates in the system of the marketplace. Right? Now,
I
we
mean,
can
I've seen that be
all,
true a lot of times. So
yeah,
again, reality.
and we can all say, hey, fair, not fair. That's a perfectly legitimate response, but it doesn't change the reality that two things are true. One, it's not working because if it was, you'd be having a different conversation. And two, that they don't think you know how to fix it.
Right. And I think a
And
lot of
so,
times that it's, I mean, and this is just like a human experience thing, right? When someone is like, I don't think you know about this, then all of a sudden our experience is like, oh my gosh, do I know about this? I don't know that I know about this. But if I'm a bad person because I don't know about it, then I'm going to defend what it is that I'm doing. And I'm like, no, I'm not a bad person. I am a good person. I know how to fix this, right? And even if we don't know, and then we're not actually helping anything because all we're doing is like protecting our ego. But that's like a very basic human response. And so I think there's an opportunity just to be able to be like, hey, yes, okay, so I want to be able to drive revenue for the business. And right now I have a bunch of stack that doesn't drive revenue. Okay, some of that was probably my decision. I decided to put that in there. And now I'm like, whoa, that's not doing what it was supposed to do. So let's go and look at it and explore. But I also think this ties back into the insularity, is that like, where do we go to explore? Because if I'm a marketer and the only place I'm exploring is other people who have the exact same experience as me, and they haven't solved the problem either, then the likelihood of us finding the solution there is very low. But what if I go talk to a CFO? Right?
yeah.
What if I go understand their perspective, what they're looking at? It might just give me a new idea about something I might try.
Yeah, I think that actually the what I say a lot to CFOs and CEOs is that if you're not happy with the way it's going, you have an obligation to change it. And the easiest way to change it is not to swap out people, it's to change the rules of the game. Right? And so it is, I was at a big marketing event not too long ago on stage, right? And one of the hardest things about that, I mean, I've gotten kind of somewhat used to it, right? But it's not fun. I can't say that I enjoy it, right? Is that I oftentimes, as I speak from this kind of perspective on it, I am the proverbial IRS agent at the cocktail party,
Hmm.
right? And when they find out that I used to be a large company CMO, it's almost like I committed treason against the tribe, right? What I am trying to do actually is advance the interests of the tribe. I am trying to help the tribe really succeed because I'm firmly convinced that when you are dealing with go to market on a reality basis and you are doing those things that work and can be shown to work, okay, there's no better job in any company than that. So I'm like unabashedly pro marketing, but they don't, in so many cases, marketers, salespeople, even product people, product is actually one of the greatest offenders here, right? Um, they don't want to hear that. They want to hear that all those bad old business people are stuck in the past, that they don't know what the hell they're talking about. They're a bunch of Philistines, right? All that kind of stuff. They want to feel good. They don't want to have to change. And so increasingly, they're being compelled to change. The laws, the regs, all that stuff, right, are starting to really come in a major way. And it's giving CFOs and general counsels and people like that the absolute reason to say, you know what, we're not doing it that way anymore. We have to meet these expectations. And again, this is as true in the EU as it is in the United States, right? Even a system as clearly different as the PRC, People's Republic of China, has those rules, right? So it's changing. And people, unfortunately, are either going to change or they're going to not be marketers anymore.
I mean, this is also my theory, and ties into what I like what Wolfram is saying in the comments here about, isn't it fascinating how the more qualified we become, the more likely it is that we believe that our perspective is the only one.
Yeah, it's so true.
And I believe the wisest people that I come across are people that have, like usually we have expertise in one area, but they have inputs from other areas. They are curious about how this could impact that and like what's happening over there and like is what they're doing something that we could look at. They have that like innate curiosity that expands outside of their own arena. And so before we go off on another tangent, I want to come back to Wolfram's question here because I know you know all about it, Mark, and we might as well get the big brain on this while the question is asked. How good are we these days within companies understanding cause and effect?
Well, actually, the natural human approach has been much more of a correlative, pattern-based approach to understanding things, right? And if you are in a kind of a bubble or a very stable state kind of environment, okay, correlation can give you some insights. There's no question, right? However, as soon as things get tumultuous, lots of turbulence, lots of rapid change, past patterns go out the window. So what we're seeing right now in the models for causal AI is that, essentially anything before 2 years ago is meaningless. It's meaningless.
That's
Now,
not that long ago.
no, it's not. And it's not that you're bad or stupid or anything like that at all. Okay. It is all about the fact that the environment, the system, in this case, an open system known as the marketplace, or you could also say life, okay, has just gone kind of stormy, kind of nuts, right? And it's destroyed the validity of all the old patterns except one. There's one pattern that has stayed the same for literally hundreds, if not thousands of years. And that is the pattern of human nature,
Oh,
human
weird.
response. Okay. So, for example, right now, if you're trying to sell stuff, particularly B2B, you're dealing with a group of people on the customer side of this equation that have never been more risk averse in their lives than they are right now. And if you just are still messaging stuff to them about, features and functions and advantages and all this kind of stuff, and you never ever really talk in a hardcore kind of way about their risks of adopting your stuff, because there's always risks. There are always risks, right? It's really comes down to, are the risks of adopting your solution to fill in the blank lesser than the risks of not, or greater than the risks of not, right? That's really the deal. It comes down to that.
Yep.
The problem is that most marketers, salespeople do it, okay? Because they pretty much have to, because they're staring their customer in the face. But marketers never talk about risk. And yet it's arguably the issue today. So there's like a whole language that marketers are not even remotely touching today that is really having a material impact on whether or not they succeed. The other thing is that in many cases, they don't really understand how the system works. In other words, what is performance aside, right? We're talking about mechanics at this point. We're saying, like, for example, there's, as long as I've been in the business, right? There's been this perpetual contest between marketing and sales for revenue credit. Okay. Except that's not the way it works. All right. And we can say, well, no, it doesn't work like that. Okay. And do you know why it doesn't work like that? Because marketing is a non-linear multiplier of sales performance, and sales is a linear value creator. So what does that mean? It means that marketing exists to help sales multiply and create more of everything than sales would be able to create by themselves. The revenue credit is always sales. However, marketing for a long time had about a 7x multiplier. So in other words, you take marketing out of the picture, okay, suddenly, and after a certain amount of lag that happens, okay, all of a sudden sales is going to fall off a cliff, and you're going to have about 1/7 the revenue that you had with marketing. That is a proven reality in causal AI, in causal analytics, right? Not just having to do with marketing and sales either, right? That is almost a law of physics. It's just the numbers that change, not the principles.
Right.
So if you know that, and you really have internalized that in the way that you think about it, plan it, execute it, it's going to be way different than how much crap can we throw up on the wall this quarter versus last quarter. I mean, and if you want proof of this, okay, let's just go to something equally undeniable, okay? Why do marketers and salespeople get all excited about Gen AI, about LLMs, about all that kind of stuff? It's because they want it to cut the cost per unit of X, right? How many emails can I send out? How many of this? How much of that? Right? And because we have reduced the cost per unit because of AI, we can do like 10 times is the volume, right? For the same money. This is great, except it's not great. You want to know why it's not great? Because your audience hates you as a result.
What? You mean my audience doesn't want to get an email every day until I force them to opt out?
Hey, let me just tell you something. I'm an investor in a number of companies that are all about taking AI and wielding it defensively. So a company that has software that gets loaded into corporate email servers, that after the email is accepted by the server, it's immediately killed. Okay, I'm talking about marketing automation type emails. Okay, it's immediately killed. Now, that means that nobody on the inside sees it. It also means that the marketer doesn't know that no one saw it.
Because the
Because it was
server logs that
accepted,
it was, delivered.
because it was logged, okay, the little back signal that goes back to the marketing team is, hey, it went through. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, why are they doing that? Because they don't want you to figure out, okay, that your stuff isn't getting through. Because then, I
You
mean,
wouldn't
what they
send
really
it.
want is they want you to just think it's all working when it's not really working.
Well, and I think this is like, we've actually used the word working a whole bunch in this conversation. And
Yeah, we have.
this is where like the data gets convoluted. So if our brain is telling us that our go-to-market strategy is working because emails are being delivered, yet we are not seeing that in any kind of revenue numbers, our definition of working is wrong.
Totally wrong.
Like,
That's
this is not
exactly it.
helpful. And so, yes, of course, the email service providers are going to defend their position in the market. That makes sense, right? Like, they want you to send lots of emails because that's how they make money. But if we are not doing our due diligence to look at, oh, how is this serving us? Then, yeah, we can expect to get duped by a whole bunch of different pieces of the puzzle.
Well, and so here's the take that and go big with it. Okay. Marketers are not looking at the marketplace realities, right? They're not saying this is what's going on. So like one of the things that we as a causal AI vendor, right, see a lot is that the first several models that customers, create, they're all about what we're doing against outcomes, right? And we're like, so what about all the factors that out there in the marketplace that you don't control that are relevant to this conversation? That's not something that they typically think about. So these are all the headwinds, tailwinds, crosswinds, okay, that either help or hurt what you're doing. And the problem is today, almost everything is a headwind, right? Now, what complicates it is that for some companies, that which is a headwind for everybody else is a tailwind for them, right? So you don't get it's not a perfect statement about any of this.
Right.
But if you've ever been like a scuba diver, I love to scuba dive, right? So I will drop down into a current and it allows me to kind of fly past all the coral reefs and the fishes and all that kind of stuff without burning a lot of my air. So I'm very efficient. But let's say that I see a cool fish and I want to turn around or I want to stop and check it out more. As soon as you do that, you run into a feeling of huge force being exerted on your body. That's the current that it was a tailwind, it's now a headwind. Okay. That's what's happening to almost everything right now across B2B marketing and B2B sales, right? It's you're encountering headwinds that are robbing the energy from what you are doing, and its ability to have a positive impact is just decimated.
Mm-hmm.
It's not your fault. However, it is your responsibility to understand it and figure out a way to deal with it effectively so that your business gets what they need. That's really what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
This is not really about blame, right?
I mean, I feel like blame doesn't help most scenarios.
Wow.
It doesn't accomplish anything at the end
It's
of
kind
the
of
day.
like ego. Ego doesn't help most scenarios either, right?
And alas, we cannot totally get rid of our ego, but we can start to listen to it in a different way where we understand. I like to call my ego Voldemort so that I know that it's not really me. It's something else. But like just to kind of get like put a nice, because I mean, you and I could talk for a very long time. And we have, and we will continue to, but I just want to make sure you're still there, Mark, because you went black for me. Can you hear me? Oh no. Kathleen asked a really good question. I was going to ask Mark it. Or let's see if it comes back. I'm going to pose my question as if it was a question, but really it's just Tracy's perspective of the conversation so far about this ability. Oh, Marcus' devices are disconnected. As soon as it seems connected, we'll get him back on the stage. But until then, just to kind of tie this back to the GTM insularity bit of it, there's an opportunity to use your creativity to like get some more of the information. If we want to figure out things that we don't know, then we have to ask questions. Mark, I think you're back. Are you back?
Tracy, I'm so sorry. I can't hear you.
Oh, maybe if the audience can let me know if you can still hear me, because it's possible that it's me. But if you're still hanging in there with us from an audience point of view,
yeah, I'll be right. I'm gonna just go in here. Sorry.
Because I can't hear you. Technology. Anyway, while we ask questions about the technological issues that we're having right now, this is a great opportunity for you to explore what kind of questions could you ask if there are things that you seem to not be able to see today in terms of why things are not working for you, then ask a question. Find someone to ask a question to. Maybe it's Mark. Oh no, now Mark, I can't hear you. I don't think you're on.
Can you?
Yes.
All right. I'm not sure what happened. Sorry about that. So, track me down on LinkedIn, right? I'm there a lot. Okay. So you can in public, you can ask something. You can always send me a LinkedIn message, right? I'll get back to you ASAP. It's like way more reliable than my email. So yeah, I'm happy to, the other thing I'm just going to tell you, and it's sort of sad that I have to say this, okay, but a lot of times people won't call or won't reach out and ask a question because they believe that to do that on LinkedIn today is essentially inviting a sales pitch, right?
Which is probably true.
Which is undeniably true, which is why I'm about to say what I'm about to say. I don't do that. My team doesn't do that, right? Not at all. There are teams, there are companies that are in our ICP, which is mainly about mentality and readiness and things like this, right? That are ready to go, and there's other ones that aren't. And our experience is that both things become clear just in conversation, normal conversation. So there's
Do you hear that, salespeople of the world?
Right.
Take note.
And if I, as CEO of a scale up right, can afford to take that kind of time with people, I dare say that everyone else can too.
And Mark, I always appreciate your time so much because I always learn something. And so thank you so much for sharing with me and sharing with our lovely audience today. Before we go, there's just an interesting question from Kathleen earlier on about the 7 times multiplier that you mentioned.
Kathleen always has great questions.
So is that 7 times multiplier even with the 50% waste?
No.
Okay.
No, it was 7x, okay, 7 to 9. It was in that range, okay, until about 2022, right? Interest rates spiked, things started getting really weird. And then I think that, you know, you don't have, this is not about taking a political position to say this, right? The last year has just been weird, okay? So, yeah, right now, there's still a multiplier if you're a competent marketing team, right, with a competent sales team. So remember, this is a ratio. This is a numerator denominator relationship here. So like you're all aware, you probably have heard this, right, that if your sales team sucks and you have a great marketing team, it will only accelerate the speed with which the company will go out of business, right? That is true for the following reason. If we just assume, for the sake of this illustration, that you have a normal sales team that is a 1, and you have marketing, which is a 7. 7 times 1 is 7, right? But what is 7 times 0? It is 0. That's why. That sounds very clever. It sounds like I've just made it very simplistic, but actually not. That's really how it works. Mm-hmm. So right now, what we're seeing a lot with all the waste of the last, say, 3 years in particular, because it has gotten significantly worse, right, in that period of time, is about 3. There's about a 3x multiplier. The better the sales team is, so let's just say that your sales team is scoring a 3 and you're a 3, that's 9. Okay, that's pretty damn good in the current market, right? This is why you have to see go-to-market as an integrated system. There is no separate credit that goes to one part because it's all indispensable and it all leverages one another, right? Mm-hmm. This is why you can have a great sales team and a great marketing team, and if your product team sucks, the whole thing is going to dive, right? If you have all of those things that are pretty strong, and all of a sudden there's an economic catastrophe out there in the world, it won't matter that all that stuff is strong. So to put it in perspective, and this is the part that people have heartburn about, and they initially don't believe me until they go out and, you know, AI search it or something, right? So statistically speaking, 70 to 80% of why anything happens the way that it does, anywhere, in anything, right, is stuff you don't control and never will control. If you want a really great example of just, it's an American example, but we'll just roll with it, right? If you're in Major League Baseball and you have a 350 batting average, .350, that means several things all at the same time. 1, you have made millions. 2, you are probably, as soon as you retire, you're going into the Hall of Fame. And 3, you have struck out at least 2/3 of your times at bat. Okay. Now, if we think about that on kind of like, let's call it an academic grade scale. Okay. That means your grade isn't just an F. It's like a deep F. And so it shows you it's a function of how much control you have or you're believed to have, right? In academe, hey, how you perform, how hard you study, how well you write, whatever, right? It's largely under your control. In baseball, most of it is not even close to being under your control. It's like I did 2 or 3 summers ago. I was in California with my family during the summer. We were kind of hanging out there for most of the summer, that summer. And I fell in with a bunch of professional surfers. So these are guys that, you know, have sponsorships totaling somewhere between $1 million and $2 million, right? And they surf all over the world. Their wipeout rate is 99.2% as of that time. Okay. Now, what does that mean? It means that how does that impact them? Like, what is their philosophy of life and their philosophy of surfing? Okay, as a result of that, it means that they know what they don't control. And so they really focus on that little bit that they do control. And that's really what we have to do, particularly in times like this that we're in right now on go-to-market. You have to understand what the world looks like and why it's not conspiring in your favor. And then you have to play the best cards you've got.
Yeah. I am like always a big, well, surfing is a really great example. Actually, I use sports examples all the time because like, I don't control the other team. I don't control if that pitcher's pitching lights out that day. I don't control the wind. I don't control the umpires, right? Like there's a lot of things in sports that we don't control, but when you're talking about the ocean, it's like even less control, because nature is gonna nature. But this is our opportunity. If you're watching today or you're catching this any other time, this is our opportunity to just create space to ask those questions, to say, what are the things that I control? What are the things I don't know? Who might be the people who know some things about that I could get into a conversation with outside of my little bubble, that could give me a new perspective? Because these opportunities to shift, and I would say actually the ease in shifting comes from someone else giving you a new perspective that makes more sense. And then being able to stand there and say like, it's this. And me being like, oh yeah, well, that makes sense. Maybe I just need to change my game.
And actually, I got to say this. I know we're a little over, but one of the coolest things of the last 2 to 3 years, right, has been so it's wargaming and things like that, which always involves synthetic data, has been around for quite a while, but it was the province of nation states and militaries and people who could throw tons of money at the problem, right? It was not in any way, shape, or form ready for prime time. But it has indisputable value because it allows you to model things that have never happened before to see what would happen if they did happen. Okay?
Yeah.
So all of a sudden with Gen AI tools, the main ones, okay, you started to be able to do this, or at least the setup for it, right? So you could say it's called causal engineering. Some people call it causal imagination, right? And what you're doing is you're saying, okay, I'm going to pick up something ridiculous. I would like our company to do 300 million ARR in the next 2 years, right? What would it take to accomplish that? And so you sit there with, let's just say, ChatGPT, right? And you say, okay, so this is the goal, and I need your help deconstructing the entire strategy, operations, and tactics that would be necessary if that ever was going to have a chance at being delivered. Okay? So it does that. all the way down. And then you say, okay, now for everything of that is measurable, I want you to create 1,000 observations. So that's about 3 years worth of data, right? For each one, high fidelity synthetic data, highly representative of that set of circumstances. And then I want to play that against a backdrop of real economic data and other kinds of marketplace data, right? And so all of a sudden, you start to see something that is actually very much like the way your GPS works. We tend to think it works because it knows our location, because we as human beings put ourselves at the center of everything, right? But what it's really doing is as soon as you punch in the address where you want to go, it starts there and it reverse engineers the best route from where you are to that place. This is exactly the same thing, just a more advanced, more situationally adept kind of situation in business or whatever, right? So that's one of them, and one, you know, the best part about it is no one has to give up any data. Right? You don't have to like track down your data inside your company. You don't have to beg for access to the data, you know, because guess what? It really reflects the past, and most of that's not going to be reflective of what you need to do next anyway. Okay. And so this is really exciting, and it's my favorite exercise by far. It's sort of a glorified what if, right? So if you are worried about your maturity levels, do I have the data that I need to run this kind of analytic or whatever, right? Not the issue anymore. The real issue is, are you prepared to think differently? The mindset shift. That's the question you have to ask yourself.
Yeah. And I think this is, again, just to tie it back, is like a mindset shift within your little bubble is very unlikely, especially to just stumble across. Right? When you broaden your resources, the perspectives that you surround yourself by, there are opportunities for something new to come up at any time, which is then the ignition point for a mindset shift. And so, again, we're going to wrap it up for today, but I think you've realized that if you ask Mark a question, you're going to get a deep, good answer. So I would highly recommend that you connect with him if you're not already connected, and ask those questions. You will never find the answer if you don't ask the question. Let us all. I do know that a lot of you in the comments are people who do ask the question. So let us all be a good example of how we can ask questions and be curious, instead of demonstrating the opposite, which is us staying very insular and keeping our fingers crossed that our opinion is correct. Because as Mark said at the beginning, reality is throwing that in our face and being like, nope. So let's be prepared for that. And then we get to be the ones that demonstrate the adaptability and the resilience that it takes to take our businesses to the next level in this new environment that we're all trying to navigate. So, Mark, thank you so much for all of your insights today. It's always fantastic being in conversation with you. Thank you to all of the amazing comments in the chat as well. We have Catherine and Leslie and Kathleen and Jay and Meryl and Tammy and Wolfram and Leanna and Ben. You guys added a lot to the conversation as well, even though there were so many great conversations. I didn't bring all of them across to the screen. But connect with Mark, connect with me, connect with each other. If we don't want to get caught up in the danger of any kind of insularity, let's get into conversation with our peeps. And here they are, readily available for you. So thank you, everyone, for sharing your time with us today. And until next time, permission to do you. Bye, folks.
Thanks so much.